In the flickering shadows of history, where empires rise and fall like embers in the wind, there are moments when fire does not merely burn, it devours entire worlds. Imagine a city alive with the hum of human ambition, its streets pulsing with commerce and voices, only for that vitality to be swallowed by an inferno that erases centuries of progress in a single, merciless night. These were the fires that erased entire cities, cataclysms that exposed the fragility of civilization itself. From the marble halls of ancient Rome to the wooden sprawl of 17th century London and the booming heart of industrial Chicago, these blazes did not just destroy buildings. They unraveled social orders, tested the limits of human resilience, and forced societies into painful rebirths. The collapse did not begin with chaos. It began quietly, in the dry tinder of neglect, ambition, and the relentless laws of nature. But no one understood what was coming next until the flames revealed the truth. The story of urban fire stretches back through millennia, but few events capture the raw terror of systemic failure like the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. The Eternal City, capital of an empire stretching from Britain to the Middle East, stood as a monument to Roman engineering and power. Its population swelled to nearly 1 million souls crammed into narrow alleys and multi-story insulae, apartment blocks built hastily from wood and tinder dry materials. Daily life thrummed with the clamor of markets at the Forum, the roar of chariots in the Circus Maximus, and the scent of olive oil lamps flickering late into humid summer nights. Citizens navigated crowded streets where merchants hawked spices from distant provinces, while senators debated in cool marble halls. Yet beneath this grandeur lay invisible fractures, overcrowded slums, inadequate water supplies despite the famous aqueducts, and a fire response system reliant on vigils, night watchmen equipped with little more than buckets and hooks. The air in July hung heavy and still, parched by weeks without rain, turning the city into a vast pyre, waiting for a spark. Early warning signs flickered unnoticed, the small shop fires that broke out regularly, quickly extinguished by neighbors, dismissed as routine hazards of urban density. But tensions simmered as Emperor Nero pursued grand visions of rebuilding Rome in his image, pressures mounting from political rivals and an overstretched imperial machine. As the sun dipped below the hills on the evening of July 18th, a spark ignited near the wooden shops lining the Circus Maximus. What began as a modest blaze in merchant stalls filled with oils, fabrics, and grains soon roared to life, fueled by strong winds that whipped through the narrow valleys between hills. The system began to fail almost immediately. Vigiles struggled against the growing walls of flame as panicked crowds surged through streets too tight for organized escape. Nero, reportedly away at his coastal villa in Antium, rushed back to find his city transforming into an apocalyptic vision. By the second day, the fire had consumed entire districts, leaping from insula to insula with terrifying speed. Key decisions proved fatal. Hesitation in ordering large-scale demolitions to create fire breaks allowed the Inferno to gain unstoppable momentum. Rumors spread like the flames themselves that Nero had ordered the blaze to clear land for his opulent Domus Aurea palace. Whether truth or propaganda, the perception shattered public trust. Human consequences unfolded in horrifying detail. Families trapped on upper floors screamed as floors collapsed. Survivors fled with whatever they could carry, trampling the weak in the crush. The air thickened with acrid smoke that choked lungs and turned day to night. Social breakdown accelerated as looting erupted amid the chaos, and old grudges boiled over into violence. For 9 days the fire raged, destroying 10 of Rome's 14 districts, and countless irreplaceable temples, including the ancient Temple of Jupiter. When rains finally quenched the last embers, the silence that followed was deafening, a void where vibrant neighborhoods once stood. The long-term historical impact of Rome's fire reshaped the empire's trajectory. Nero seized the moment to impose new building codes, mandating wider streets, stone construction, and better access to water, measures that hinted at lessons learned from collapse. Yet the human cost lingered, thousands dead or displaced, the economy strained by reconstruction, and political instability deepened by scapegoating Christians, whom Nero blamed in brutal public spectacles. The fire marked an irreversible rupture, exposing how even the mightiest empire could be humbled by its own hubris and neglect. Centuries later, similar vulnerabilities echoed across time. In 1666, London stood as the bustling heart of a rising global power under King Charles II, recently recovered from plague and civil war. Its medieval streets, lined with timber-framed houses packed shoulder to shoulder and topped with thatched roofs, created a tinderbox. Daily life before the collapse felt deceptively secure. Merchants traded spices and cloth along the Thames, apprentices shouted in crowded lanes, and the smell of baking bread mingled with river fog at dawn. Yet early and visible warning signs abounded. A long, dry summer had parched the city after a harsh winter. Water levels in the Thames ran low, and wooden structures leaned precariously. Rising tension built as the population swelled, with rural migrants seeking opportunity in a city recovering from epidemic. The spark that would erase much of London struck shortly after midnight on September 2nd, in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane. A forgotten oven ember, perhaps, or an improperly doused flame. Accounts differ, but the result was the same. By dawn, flames licked across rooftops, driven by easterly winds. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, hesitated when urged to pull down houses for fire breaks, famously declaring the fire too small to warrant such drastic action. That mistake proved catastrophic. As the day wore on, the blaze intensified into a firestorm, generating its own fierce winds that hurled burning debris across the city. Key pressures mounted. The ongoing Second Anglo-Dutch War strained resources, while memories of recent plague made citizens wary of gathering in crowds. By Monday, panic gripped the streets as rumors of foreign arsonists, French and Dutch agents, sparked mob violence against immigrants. The moment the system began to fail arrived when St. Paul's Cathedral, thought impregnable with its stone walls, caught fire from wooden scaffolding and collapsed in a thunderous roar that echoed for miles. Human consequences were profound. Over 13,000 houses reduced to ash, 87 churches gone, and nearly 100,000 people rendered homeless, huddling in fields beyond the city walls with their salvaged possessions. Disease and exposure claimed more lives in the aftermath than the flames themselves. Social breakdown manifested in theft, fights over scarce resources, and a mass exodus that strained the countryside. Yet from this destruction emerged a transformed London. Christopher Wren and others redesigned the city with brick and stone, wider avenues, and improved firefighting infrastructure. Lessons that influenced urban planning for generations. The fire accelerated the shift from medieval to modern metropolis, but the scars remained, a haunting reminder of how quickly prosperity could vanish in smoke. Across the Atlantic, another young city tested the same deadly equation. By 1871, Chicago had exploded into a powerhouse of American industry, its population surging past 300,000 on the strength of railroads, lumber, and meatpacking. Wooden sidewalks, frame houses, and dense commercial districts defined its rapid growth. Daily routines hummed with the clatter of trains, the lowing of cattle in stocked yards, and the scent of sawdust from lumber mills lining the river. But invisible warnings accumulated. An unusually dry summer and autumn left the prairie parched. Small fires burned regularly in the wooden city, and building codes lagged behind explosive expansion. Rising instability came from class tensions, immigrant influxes, and the pressures of breakneck industrialization. On the evening of October 8th, fire erupted in the barn of Patrick and Catherine O'Leary on DeKoven Street. Legend blamed a cow kicking a lantern, though the true origin remains debated. Strong winds from the southwest soon turned it into an uncontrollable monster. Firefighters, exhausted from battling smaller blazes earlier that week, could not contain it. The blaze leaped the Chicago River not once but twice, consuming the heart of the business district. By the time officials ordered dynamite to create fire breaks, the strategy backfired, spreading embers further. The collapse accelerated as temperatures soared so high that stone buildings shattered and iron melted. Human suffering reached biblical proportions, around 300 dead, 17,500 buildings destroyed, and 100,000 left homeless in one of America's fastest-growing cities. Families fled across open prairies or into Lake Michigan, some drowning as they sought refuge in the water. Looting and chaos erupted. The social fabric tore as rich and poor alike confronted shared vulnerability. The roar of flames drowned out screams, while the sky glowed an infernal red visible for miles. In the aftermath, Chicago's great rebuilding became legendary. Architects like Louis Sullivan pioneered skyscrapers with steel frames and fire-resistant materials, establishing the city as a birthplace of modern American architecture. Population rebounded swiftly, and economic momentum actually accelerated, proving that from ashes could rise greater strength. Yet parallel tragedies unfolded that same fateful night of 1871 in the forests around Peshtigo, Wisconsin, where a wildfire of unprecedented fury consumed entire towns, claiming up to 2,500 lives in what remains America's deadliest fire, overshadowed only by Chicago's fame. These events underscored a pattern: fire as both destroyer and catalyst. Even into the 20th century, San Francisco's 1906 earthquake triggered Inferno destroyed over 25,000 buildings across 490 blocks, revealing how natural forces combined with human error could erase urban dreams. Across these eras, the long-term historical impacts revealed deep truths about human societies. Fires forced innovation in building codes, urban planning, and emergency response. Yet they also exposed inequalities. The poor suffered most in cramped wooden districts, while elites often rebuilt stronger. They triggered demographic shifts, economic realignments, and sometimes political scapegoating that altered power structures. In Rome, it fueled persecution. In London, it spurred royal intervention. In Chicago, it accelerated modernity. Each blaze marked an irreversible rupture where the old order died in flames, and something new, often unrecognizable, emerged from the ruins. The sensory memory lingered. The acrid smell of charred timber, the unnatural silence after the roar, the haunting sight of skeletal chimneys standing like tombstones over lost neighborhoods. What these fires ultimately teach is the precariousness of our constructed worlds. Civilizations build monuments to permanence, stone cathedrals, iron bridges, towering offices, yet remain vulnerable to the primal force of flame, wind, and human frailty. The collapse rarely announces itself with trumpets. It creeps in through overlooked details: a dry season, a hesitant official, a spark in the wrong place. By the time the signs became unmistakable, the city was already lost. Survivors rebuilt, societies adapted, but the ghosts remained. Whispers in the architecture, cautionary tales passed through generations. In our own age of dense megacities and climate pressures, these stories resonate with eerie relevance. The embers of history glow faintly, warning that the next great erasure may not be so far away. As the last flames die and the smoke clears, one question echoes through the ruins: will we remember, or will we repeat the cycle once more? The silence after the fire holds the answer, haunting and eternal.